Sugar 23. I'm Angela Ledgerwood, and this is Lit Up. On a sweltering recent summer Friday, I was lucky enough to visit Helen Ellis in her beautiful home on the Upper East Side of Manhattan to talk about her new book of essays, Kiss Me in the Coral Lounge, Intimate Confessions from a Happy Marriage. Our conversation actually did take place in the Coral Lounge mentioned in the book, and it's this vibrantly painted, art-filled room, the kind of room that makes you want to sit down with your best friend and gossip all day. I spoke to Helen about her former best-selling book, American Housewife, many years ago on Lit Up, so I knew how much fun this conversation was going to be. But nothing prepared me for being in her presence again, and for the cameo of her great husband coming into the room and sharing some insights. So I really think you're going to love this conversation. Enjoy.
I think I purged everything out in the book.
Well,
Not everything.
we have to tell everyone who you are, and this is Helen Ellis.
It's me.
This is a return to Lit Up.
Yes.
Because we got to speak about American Housewife so many years ago.
You were my very first podcast I ever went on.
Oh my goodness. And this is
my
just
first.
Yeah, we're returning now. I didn't take Viagra this morning.
You don't have to take it.
So we're not reprising that any
That's
other
right.
first.
But we were in a very fancy sort of studio
Yes.
around Hudson when we did it. And now you're in the Coral Lounge.
So I am actually in Helen's home, surrounded by the most arresting and interesting artwork, which features in the book, a beautiful essay. It's a hot, kind of one of the second hottest days of summer so far.
Yes.
And we're here to talk about your newest book, Kiss Me in the Coral Lounge. And we are in the Coral Lounge.
You can kiss me before you go.
Exactly. Well, there's been a lot of other, kisses, I'm sure, and, beautiful parts of your marriage celebrated in the Coral Lounge. And that's something that I just adored about this book, is that it's a celebration of just it's not saying the little things is kind of the wrong way to do it, but just the beautiful of every day about a happy marriage.
I think it is the little things. I don't mind that. I think romance is small. It's small gestures. Love is small gestures. And the Coral Lounge is a small room, but it's where everything happens. Lex and I were talking this morning about, I don't know why it came up, but it was about how we did away with Christmas gifts. At the very beginning of our marriage, we used to have Christmas parties, and that was our gift to each other. And we did away with birthday gifts. And he said, it was so good that you just told me 28 years ago that if you get me a huge box of Russell Stover's chocolate candy and flowers every year for Valentine's Day, we're good. And we're good. So it really is, these small things I see on the interwebs, a lot of big romantic gestures. There are hot air balloons. There is one couple, have you seen this couple, that hide in their house and shoot paint-filled balloons at each other every day? And that seems like a lot.
That sounds terrifying. I don't like surprises.
I don't like surprises either. So, yeah, romance is very small.
Well, also, I think something that you're touching upon is that romance is really just for the two people involved.
That's right.
Our lives now have become so performative with online things. And I love, one of the essays near the end of the book really does talk about, an online presence and a life, but if you have to signal so much, it's a sign that, something might be a little wrong.
That's right. When I see a lot of public declaration, is that the right word? Decoration could also work. I think, something's going on at home. I think the most romantic thing or the best part of a marriage is privacy. Even though I write about my husband in the book, it's still a pretty private, it's still a pretty private relationship. I don't tell it all. I tell a lot, but I don't tell it all.
No, but I feel like it's not that type of book.
Mm-mm.
Like, when you read something, you're like, oh, this is just a joy to be. Like, it reminded me of Nora Ephron.
Oh, thank you. That makes me so happy.
Yes.
That makes me so happy.
Like understanding human nature and human relationships and the friends you guys have too that come into it. But just because I want to start at a certain place, and I think that'll lead us. One of my favorite things in the book was when you guys work out, like, we're not that type of couple. And I think everyone can relate to that.
Yes.
And you have friends that have certain things, one friend was like, the husband's like, I signed us up for a half marathon. And the wife's like, we're not that type of couple. And then I thought it was interesting. He says, but I want us to be. I've had to think about that a lot lately.
Because you are engaged.
Because I am.
Yes.
And realizing, in the first years of a relationship, what is really important to that other
all
person.
Years. It's not just the beginning. We're still figuring out what kind of couple we are. We've been married 22 years, and that's marriage. It's figuring out not only what kind of couple you are, but what kind of couple you are not. And we are not a couple who wants to come and stay at your house. We are not a couple who wants to backpack across Europe. We are not a couple who, what else, wants to do a 5K. But we are a couple who likes to go to the film forum to celebrate everything. We like to make Valentine's at home instead of going out on Valentine's Day. We don't like to go to brunch.
Anthony was like, he refuses to go to brunch. And he was like, I don't need to go to any children's
That's correct.
birthday parties. And I thought, it's so good when someone's clear.
Yes. You have to, you have to accept your partner and celebrate your partner for who they are. Once a friend had a baby, and that baby was located in the depths of New Jersey. And the baby was having a 1-year birthday party, and are you coming to the 1-year-old's birthday party? And I said, well, I am. Well, isn't your husband? I'm like, no, he is playing softball. It's a Saturday. Well, doesn't he like children? He says, oh, no. I said, he likes children. He doesn't like the commute to see your children on a Saturday. And I'm not going to make him do it because I want to stay in a happy marriage.
No, it's really good finding those boundaries. And then are there any that, there's obviously many, but things that have changed? Like, were you that type of couple and now you go, wow, like 20 years later, you are?
I think that we have become a little bit more of a spontaneous couple. Every so often, if you look in the front room, I bought a little chalkboard. It's the size of a book. Years ago from Fish's Eddie's, the old store that used to be down on Union Square. And it's just a little chalkboard. It sits on my husband's desk. And I put a motto up ever so often. And we just changed the motto a few weeks ago. And mottos have been things like, years ago, it was, be the boy, but dress like a man. And my husband is someone who is very responsible. He, for many years, 20 years, was been an editor at huge news corporations, and he just worked nonstop. And years ago, I wrote, be the boy, because he would have days on the weekends where he'd say, oh, well, I want to go play softball with my 20-year group, but it's raining outside, and I should be doing work. And I thought, well, what would the 10-year-old you say? It wouldn't even be a question. You would go out and run through the mud. So we still say that, be the boy. And then a few months ago, it was, this too shall pass. We were going through some family hardship, and it was the thought of, okay, this too shall pass. Let's just make it through. And now my husband has recently moved to a new job where he's editing a travel site, and he doesn't like to travel. And so the mantra is, let's get lost. And it comes from that Chet Baker song, Let's Get Lost. And that's the way we're heading out. He's heading into a new job, and I'm heading out with a new book. And let's just have fun and go where the roads take us. So you got to, I guess, you have to keep surprising each other and changing your motto. Does that
Oh,
make
goodness.
sense? Did I go way off on a tangent?
No, I absolutely love that. Because I think it's good to look at something every day and be reminded. I can definitely get stuck. I'm quite a comfortable person and I just keep going, whereas my partner is quite voracious in terms of, energy levels, kind of interest level. He's kind of like a hyper person, but gets a lot done because of that drive. And I think I can be comfortable letting that other great storyteller kind of tell our stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, where's my person to bring that? So I'm going to think of my own motto.
Think of a mantra. Yes, think of a motto or a mantra. Because people always say marriage is work. And I think marriage is play.
Yes.
But you can change the rules, you know. And that's what our sort of monthly or yearly mantra is. We just change it. And we put it in writing.
I think that's
in chalk, so it can be erased.
That's important too. Now, obviously you adore your husband so much.
He is on the other side of this wall, and he will probably be out soon.
So something I also loved, and she's a feature in all your books, your mama.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I do love in this, there's, only a couple of times or maybe one time a year that your husband calls your mom for a very specific reason. I'm sure they talk a lot.
Yes.
But to tell her a funny, crazy story. Because your family, as we can tell, are kind of master storytellers.
Yes, I'm the quiet one.
Which is astounding.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about the story I'm talking about, but also what it's like, to be inside of a family like that and how obviously the gift of the gab has really informed who you are and how you write.
Well, like you say, I in my very first book that came out in 1999, I wrote a novel called Eating the Cheshire Cat. And it was dedicated to my parents. And the dedication was, to my parents who taught me the value of a really good story. And I was raised by a bunch of Southerners. My parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, we all entertained each other by telling stories. I mean, it's really a skill. And it's a way of bringing other people into the family. And when my husband or other people appear in stories that we tell, you're really part of the family. And so when an outsider, Lex is definitely an insider now, but when someone who's not in our family gives it a go with us, we really celebrate that because my husband is a very quiet person. So when he tells a story or puts on a voice or does a little routine, we celebrate it as if it's the Super Bowl. It's just a great thing.
Well, and what did your husband's friend, so they go on these walks.
Do you want me to tell the story?
I think so.
Okay, so it's the height of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And most of our friends left the city. We stayed in the city, and those of us who stayed in the city really clung to each other and saw each other more under interesting outside circumstances. And so my husband started taking nightly walks with a friend of ours who manages a bunch of apartment buildings around the city. And so every walk would include a stop at some apartment. And there was a leak at the apartment, or there was something in a drain, or there was a smell coming from it, and that smell was not brisket. It was always a problem. But it was never anything dramatic. And my husband would come home, and I'd say, "What happened on your walk?" And he would say, "Nothing." And one day he comes home, "Oh, Helen, And this is him. You're going to be so happy. I'm going to make you so happy. I have a story for you. And that is a gift. A story really is a gift. A story is romantic. I find this story very romantic, but I don't know what other people will think. So he and our friend had been in a basement of a townhouse that had been abandoned for almost a year. And that place was dark. There was no electricity, no furniture, cobwebs, rustling. And, my husband's friend says, all right, I got to go to the basement and check a leak. Do you want to come down to the basement? And my husband says, no, no, thank you. And he waits outside the basement, and our friend goes down. And our friend is down there for 5 minutes. No response. Our friend is down there for 10 minutes, no response. And my husband finally, gets the nerve up to call his name. And, I'm coming up. He comes up, and in his hands is a shoebox. And he says to my husband, guess what's in the box? And my husband guessed, and he did not guess it. My husband tells me the story. Guess what's in the box? I, of course, immediately guessed satanic talisman.
Yes.
Second guess, fetus. No, that's not what's in the box. We proceed to tell this story to our friends over the next 6 months. Nobody guesses what's in this box until one finally does. Our friend Martin finally does. But it is just the creepiest, most delicious, bizarre story. And I'm not going to reveal what's in that box. Did you guess what was in it? No, you did not.
I did not guess what was in it.
Did you make a guess?
I mean, I probably had many while I was there. I think I'd gone through like severed head, hand, toe.
Yes.
Like it was always a body part for me.
See, that tells you a little something about yourself.
Well, and I love that in the story. It's like when you say, I always think like with astrologer or fortune teller, it's just interesting where your mind goes.
Yeah.
Like they can suggest things and you're like, oh, this is, I'm not believing this. But, when they're like, that person, that it means a lot to you. And you're like, grandma Joy, and it's just who pops to your head. So in this case.
It tells you a lot about yourself as to what you guessed. And really people guessed a lot of things. Somebody guessed there were shoes in the shoebox. And I thought, well, that is so
boring.
Logical. Well, very logical. People guessed mice. People guessed love letters. I thought that was very romantic,
nice.
But nobody guessed what was in that box until the very end.
You'll have to read to find
Yeah, you really
out.
will. You will never guess.
But it casts me back to the pandemic, and I know we're kind of all in a period where we don't want to dwell there, but I stayed in the city as well. And my boyfriend was living on 75th Street. So we were just 3 blocks away.
Yes, yeah.
And I would go there. I lived in Brooklyn, but I bought a bike, which is very unlike me.
City.
So I would bike from Brooklyn to Manhattan with a weekend bag. So as the world was totally having the saddest moment it's had, I was essentially going away for every weekend.
Yeah.
Packing the underwear and the outfit.
It was a little bit romantic.
The outfit to only be inside because we were the only person we saw. But in his building, he was the only one left.
Mm-hmm. There were 13 people in this building. And I think there's 62 apartments and there were 13 people. And that's what I like about what you just said is for the pandemic, we know quite a few people who divorced during the pandemic because you really got to know your partner. And I love that you fell more in love with your partner. It brought you closer together, it sounds like. And it definitely brought us closer together. It was, again, some people renew their love affairs by, I don't know, making banana bread or I don't know what people do, but we just stayed in and enjoyed a very quiet life. And it sounds like you did the same.
Yeah. Were you able to write in that time?
I did.
Oh.
Yeah, it's interesting because my husband at the time was the editor of CBS News Digital.
Oh
So
my
he was running a
God.
newsroom out of this apartment. I
Also, just
saw
processing that
it
news.
was it
He
was
must have
stunning for me
been.
because it was Zooms, conference calls from 8 a.m. until we went to sleep, and then they would wake us up with phone calls. I heard and saw every bit of coverage, and it's national news. So we saw, I heard and saw school shootings, mass shootings. January 6th was covered in this very room. The Coral Lounge is where CBS was heading up the coverage, and I was sitting there watching him cover it. So in the beginning, I was on a deadline to finish the last book. Bring your
Yeah.
baggage and don't pack light. So I was sitting in the bedroom with headphones on to make my deadline. And then I sold the idea for this book still during the pandemic. And it was a great comfort to me because I just mostly stayed in a happy place. Some people cope by, people cope in different ways. And writing is definitely a coping method because you can disappear. I know a lot of writers, some writers didn't write at all, and some writers wrote more than they ever did. Um, and yeah, I wrote.
You also have created plants. You fostered.
These are the remaining
And
living ones.
I was going to ask you because on my way here, I went to a florist to get you something, and I thought I'm going to get Helen a plant for her, greenhouse. And I had a feeling. I thought, you know what? I don't know if I want to give her a plant that might die
That's
soon.
all right.
And then you'll feel guilty. So
No,
I
I
got
feel
you
no
some
guilt.
beautiful flowers.
I love them. I love them. And that's the thing. And about plants, you cannot feel guilty. Plants die, and you have to learn what kind of plant you do well with. I can't do a fiddle leaf. I can't do a calathea. But I can do a birds of a feather. I can do a monstera. I love a birkin. And when I say a birkin, I mean a birkin plant. And a zizi and a snake. Those I can keep alive. And, I got to know a Instagram plant lady, the black plant chick who I fell in love with during the pandemic. We had many Zoom therapy plant session, and she had a podcast at the time, and she said, you have to let some plants go to bring new plants into your life, and that applies to the rest of your life as well. Whether that be you have to let a job go to let a new job come into your life. Sometimes you have to let friends who aren't the friends you thought they were go to let more joy into your life. You have to let stuff go. You have to let grudges go. You have to let things go so you can bring more in. So I don't feel any guilt about murdering
I also love
my
that
plants.
you got help. Like you
Yes.
sought help.
You have to. And that's another thing about marriage. You have to ask for help. You have to let them know. I'm going to tell you all the things you need to know.
This is it.
Well, all the things that we need to know. Like, this book is not a how-to. It's a how we do. So for us, we were just talking about it this morning. You have to tell the person what's helpful. And like I said, I told my husband, all I want is drugstore chocolate in a heart shape and flowers from Valentine's Day. And and then if I ever am in a, foul mood or if I'm stressed or whatever, he does my laundry. And that is very helpful. And that makes me very happy. You got to tell him what you want. And he says things like, just last week, it's always changing. When I'm cleaning the house, I'll hang a paper shopping bag on the back door and fill it with papers to take outside. And when it's full, I take it outside. Well, he does not care for that. So now I just put it on the floor. It's silly things like that.
It is those tiny things.
Yes.
Like if there's a clothing item strewn, chucked on the ground, I assume that is allowing for I can scoop that up and chuck it in the wash.
Yeah.
But that's not at all what that symbolizes. That's apparently
That's where it belongs.
that's where it belongs, and I will be re-wearing that several times.
Yes, smell test. You got to smell test it, and then every morning it looks like my husband spontaneously combusted because there's shorts and a t-shirt by the side of the bed. But I do pick it up. I smell the t-shirt. That's just because I like it.
Those and
I put it away. I mean different things.
yeah, it's like a little.
Oh, here he comes.
Oh, great! I hear the
Look, there he is.
footsteps. There's the famous man himself.
We're in progress.
You're in progress.
Yes. All right. Bye, dear.
I was going to say you could just have a quick hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Hi.
We're not going to put you on the spot, but we're talking about
I'm an open book.
your lovely marriage.
It is a lovely marriage.
Yeah, I can sense that. And thank you for allowing me to come into the Coral Lounge
Yeah.
and feel the good
All are
vibes.
welcome in the Coral Lounge.
No, thanks a lot. Well,
Right.
yeah.
Bye, dear.
We won't be too long.
I would like me to leave
I wish I had a third mic, but I don't think you really want to join us.
He likes to appear on the page.
Yeah,
I tell you, I my whole thought of when I write about him is I think of other ways that people write about their partners. And my favorite is the way David Sedaris writes about Hugh. And I think if he does, whatever he does with you, I only know so much about him, but everything I know I like. And so I just try to treat him like he's my Hugh.
That's such a beautiful thought. Someone else that I thought of when I was reading your essays was Anne Patchett.
Oh, God, that thrills me. You've named everybody that thrills me.
Truly. And how she also had said that people don't write about happy marriages.
Yes.
And some of the essays she's written.
She has that wonderful collection. This is the story of a happy marriage.
Yes. And I just thought that you can sense this. But the through line, look, for David Sedaris, for you guys, is laughter.
Yes.
And having a sense of humor about things. And I don't know, maybe it was like Jane Fonda. I feel like she always has great, how to be in a relationship, like advice.
She's been in a
for
few.
a life, yes. But also, it's like, okay, sex is very important. And I feel like that also connects to laughter because sex is also very funny.
Yes.
But I know things are fine if I can joke with Anthony about the argument we had. If you're walking down the street and you're like, oh, shall I, pop across the street to the laundromat, or something. And and then you're like, okay, we've diffused that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just saying to somebody, I was at dinner with someone, and I really have only heard my husband in 28 years raise his voice twice. Once we had a rat in this apartment, and he screamed. And once he saw the cat peeing on the floor. And I thought we had an intruder in the apartment, but he was very alarmed. But that was all taken care of. I just took care of it. But really, the man never raises his voice. And that's
really
enjoyable.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Me, I'm always trying to control myself from just talking at the top of my lungs because we're a very loud family.
It's interesting that you've found someone who is obviously so highly accomplished and charismatic in his own way.
So
just
cute.
from like,
isn't he cute?
yes, like just from those few minutes, I'm like, oh.
Is that what you pictured? Did you picture a blonde? No.
I don't know if I'd even pictured, but there's like an energy or a feeling that you conjure. And I was like, anyone that's with Helen has to be just the best person on the planet anyway. But how does he cope with your family? Did that take a long time?
No, I think that we gave him a wide berth, and we really encourage him. He again is such a responsible person and had been through a lot of loss in his family, and so our family just really welcomed him. If he sort of grew tired of us yammering on, hooting and hollering, and he just got up and left the room, we would applaud. Good for you. Take care of yourself. Good for you.
Yes.
Oh, you don't want to come. We when I was on book tour for Southern Lady Code, he flew in to meet me in Georgia, and the whole family met in Georgia because we have relatives there. And he says, "Well, I was just here 20 years ago." We said, "Yes, that's
I love
right.
that. The
Good for
memories are
you.
so strong.
Good for you." Yeah, we encourage him to be, to take care of himself, and so when he does show up, it means the
It's
world.
special.
It really is special.
Well,
Yeah.
just to give an idea of how dynamic and fabulous your family is, I want you to tell us an older story from one of your books, but it's about that 13th birthday.
Oh my God, yes.
Because my colleague Ruby, who is obsessed with you as well, reminded me of that story yesterday, and we were laughing about it. We're like, this is bonkers.
It's, as my father says, his life mantra is, you gotta make your own fun in life. So this is 1983, and I have a 13th birthday party. This is Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So we are in the middle of the woods in a shed at, some parks department that we had rented the shed from. There is one entrance to the shed, a glass door. There are probably 30, 13-year-olds sitting around in costume. So there's a
Which
Zara.
costumes?
Oh my! So I, of course, I was a punk rocker. So to a 13-year-old Alabama girl, that meant a side pony and a police T-shirt, because that was really punk. There was my oldest friend in Florida, who is a petite, blonde, head of the gardening club, came as Death with a full Reynolds wrapped sickle and a black hood. There was a Zorro. There was one girl who was very early developed, came in a full nude body stocking with a carnival snake wrapped around her, and she was Eve.
God.
I mean, it was quite the
That's
collection.
so imaginative.
I know, and all these things, I don't know if they would fly anymore. So we're in the middle of the woods. We sit down to have pizza and watch The Black Cat. That old horror movie, and that means rolling out a 13-inch television as deep as a microwave, and lights go off. And the whole time, my mother was in law school at the time. She went to law school at 40, so she was still in law school, and she had a young, probably 24-year-old friend from law school helping her out. So it's my father, my mother, and this friend of my mother's. My sister, who was a child at the time, was at a spend the night party somewhere else. All us 13-year-olds were sitting around, and the lights are out, and this man walks into the shed. And he's a young man, bearded, plaid shirt, straight out of Central Casting. And he starts to talk in a very stern voice to this law student. I found this wallet under our bed. He's holding up a wallet. And she's saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I know you're cheating on me. I found this wallet under the bed. You need to go. You need to go. He pulls a gun out, full gun, holding it at her. My mother, of course, hands on her hips. You are ruining my daughter's birthday party. Get out. My father is saying, you need to leave. My friend Lori has already reached over and turned on the lights and paused the TV. We are all sitting there. We are from Alabama. We had already had 2 guns pulled at school, so we knew what to do. Most of us were frozen, or we were under our little picnic tables, and he is yelling at this woman, if I can't have you, no one can.
Oh my God.
Screaming at her. My mother is, get out of here, get out of here. We're all terrified. People are crying. My friend in the death mask, the tears are running down her neck. And my father says, we're going to take this outside. We're going to take it outside. He gets this man outside, and we hear that gun fire minimum 3 times. My mother can see through the glass door, screams bloody murder, screaming at what she is seeing. Everyone is of course, completely freaked the hell out. And then my father and this man bound back in and say, okay, we're going to play a game. Who can remember the most about this incident? And he divides us out into teams. Yellow legal pads are passed out. And the whole thing had been faked because it was a Halloween birthday party. And they were blanks in the gun. It was a real gun. Blanks in the gun. Nobody called the police. Nobody went to therapy. Nobody videotaped it because nobody had a phone. Nobody got in trouble. Like, it was just, but it was the stuff of legends.
my
And when I
God.
tell that story, and when I was in Georgia at that time, I read that story at Avid Bookshop. And people just were sitting there in disbelief. And I said, if you were at that party, stand up. And there were 4 women, who had been at that party. And they stood up and said, every word is true.
So brilliant and wild. But I mean, I remember when I went to a birthday party and they showed Silence of the Lambs, and I came home and told my mum because I had such nightmares.
Yeah.
That there were calls to that mother.
No.
There was a whole thing, and I thought, no kid.
It was the 80s.
I know, but
And it was
wow.
Alabama. It was the 80s in Alabama. Yeah.
So this, I mean, I think that's just a good example.
Yeah.
We're not talking like outgoing people. It's really, just like a zest for life.
We
for fun.
enjoy a dark joke. And, one year my father calls me and says, this is, 10 years ago, Helen Michelle, have good news. Your mother and I played the lottery. We won $4 million. We're going to give you and your sister $1 million each. What? April Fools.
Oh.
I did call him once early on in our relationship. Papa, I'm calling from Vegas. Lex and I just got married.
He did not.
April Fools.
Well, also, so Lex asked if you could move in together
Oh.
before you were married. And for a Southern lady,
Oh, no. Yeah, I had certain rules. Never, no. I need to be engaged. I need to have my ring. Now I've been here 22 years, and I'm going to go out feet first, I think.
well, I think it's important to have those rules for whatever they are for each of us, that make us feel
It's your
secure.
marriage.
It's your life. Yeah.
And again, you can change the rules. You can always change the rules.
I'm like just clocking that because when you said that you had graduated from therapy
Yes.
recently, I was like, I'm definitely not there yet. But
I'll put some time in.
I think I'll have to examine you can change the rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe I hadn't ever thought that this was a good link, but I mentioned that we're sitting in the Coral Lounge and we're surrounded by such incredible art that is all very different.
It's all very different, and I will say that I'll point a few things out. Like this piece, that's a family. It looks like a 1950s scene. That is It was used from the 50s as a way for French people to learn English. So you would point at things and say, that's a television. So, it was $100. It was from sort of trade fair.
Love
and the piece in the top right corner, which is a portrait of a living room. That is my parents' apartment, their first apartment together. My father hired a local artist. They lived in Alaska together, who came in without my mother knowing and painted this room. And I'm looking at that green bench, which they had my whole life. And it was interesting because my mother didn't like it for a long time because she saw it as you had somebody come into our apartment without me knowing. And the piece underneath it was from Housing Works. It's a screen print of 3 girls from the 70s in coral colors, which is exactly why I painted this room coral, just kind of hanging out. And the art is really different. It's not always from a traditional, art gallery or, art is, like I say, art is everywhere. But the piece behind you is the last piece we bought. It's a huge piece of a woman
Wonderful.
sitting with all her house plants. And I bought it probably 4 months into the pandemic. I had been playing a lot of poker online with a group, and so I had won some money.
Yes.
And that's where it went to. And the artist is Patrick Puckett. He's a Jackson, Mississippi artist, and it came out of the Commerce Gallery in Texas, and he is going to be the official artist of the Mississippi Book Festival this year, and did a fabulous portrait of Eudora Welty that's going to be, part of their program. But yeah, I mean, art comes from everywhere.
Well, and I love in your essay about it in the book, and kind of relating back to relationships and things, is that art is whatever you like.
That's right.
And I think for a long time, we can question our instincts because, is this, we see things, like sometimes I'll go to an art gallery and I am just totally miffed.
Yeah.
And then I'll go to another and just go, oh.
And the thing is, you're going to make mistakes. Your taste will change. And just because you bought it doesn't mean it has to stay on your wall forever. And you have to allow yourself that. But my thought is, it used to be, Lex says, all right, you have to cry with joy. You have to cry with happy tears when you see something, and then we're going to get it. But it's that thought of, we like to go to like big art fairs where you have a bunch of galleries, and I'll see something and then I'll walk away from it. But if I have that thought of, oh my gosh, somebody else is going to get it, I got to go back and get it, that's usually a good sign. But yeah, it's just that thought of what do you like? It's going to be on your wall. Like, I never buy anything with the thought of reselling it or. It's just what makes you happy. It's just what makes you happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking at a collage behind you that is stunning.
I cried over that one.
Oh yeah, it's black and white and grays and
Plants again.
oh yeah.
I knew those plants were coming.
But against the coral wall, it's very, very striking.
And we move things constantly. We move the art around constantly. We just moved this piece that says "For Like Ever." I think it was an anniversary present I gave to Lex. It's just a poster from, it must be 15 years, 20 years old. And it was in the entryway with the pink flamingo wallpaper for a while. And then it was in the living room for a while. And then just 2 days ago, we moved it in here because we sent the rugs out to be cleaned. And then we rearranged all the furniture. And we thought, oh, I think maybe it goes there. So if you're sitting here and you see there's art on the floor, that's what these two octopuses used to be there. And now they have to find a new home. They have to find a new home, which means things are going to move. Things move around a lot. Oh, here comes Big Boy.
Oh, hi. There we go.
And when I say Big Boy, I don't mean my husband.
Right.
This is our old cat, who you read about in the book.
Oh my
He's
gosh,
a
that
lover.
The letter to the house, the cat sitter was just priceless.
This is our 17-year-old tuxedo cat. He runs this household, and he has come in to be with the ladies because he likes ladies who talk. Yes.
Well, Helen, we're at that time, and we could talk for forever.
Yes.
But I want to ask. Oh, okay, because she knows. Oh, he knows.
I know.
He knows. What lights you up?
What lights me up? I love that. Love. Art, cats, books, plus ones, new people, quiet time, color. What lights me up? Stories and secrets. Ooh, I love gossip. I love to know about someone that I don't know.
That's such an interesting
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Tell me something about someone I don't know. I love it.
Gosh, I wish I had a
I
juicy
know,
one for
I know.
you. I'll have to press stop and tell you when we're not recording.
I know. I'm sure you can see that Big Boy has come in to have his drink out of the toilet.
I mean, whatever makes him
It's
happy
all
at
true.
this age.
It's all true. I know.
Well, thank you so much for having me in your home.
In the Coral Lounge.
What a pleasure. What a joy. I loved this book.
Thank
it
you.
really made me think about how to have a joyful, spontaneous relationship and just all the little bright sparks you can kind of harness for happiness.
Well, thank you for remembering me. You know, I was given a real second chance with American Housewife. Funny enough that's the title of that book, and it was all fiction. And now here you are, I guess, 7 years later,
It's wild,
talking about
isn't
true
it?
stories of a happy marriage. So you really are my happy bookends. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And good luck to you.
Oh, gosh. Thank you.
I think you're on the right track. I think you're on the right
I
track.
hope so. I think so too.
I think so.
For-
Judging by the ring, I think you're on the right track.
And that by the ring, I think we need to explain
so.
that it's a ring
Carl.
we picked up outside of the Met Museum at a little stall.
And they're all eyes,
Their
right?
eyes, and it
love it.
was all of $20.
That's beautiful.
Which is what I love about it. You know, when people, one of my colleagues who's very stylish was so one who goes, Angie, do you mind if I ask you about that ring? I said, sure.
Yeah.
He goes, is it Hermes? And I said, Kevin, you have a maid?
My dad.
Madam, let me tell you something. I was like, I'll get you one for Kate, for his wife. And he goes, how much? Can I give you money for it? And I'm like, you know what? It's on me.
Yeah.
It's on me. So that's the story of the ring.
That's right. And that's going to be the story of your marriage, and it's a happy one. That's a good story.
Thank you. Lit Up is a podcast from Sugar 23. It's hosted by me, Angela Ledgerwood, and is produced by Liam Billingham. Mike Mayer and Michael Sugar are the executive producers. The theme music is by Andrei Radovsky. Until next time, bye everyone.